Perfect. And we will go ahead and start our presentation. I will pass it over to Andrew to first lead us in talking a little bit about nutrition insecurity here in San Diego.
Alrighty, so let's go ahead and get started with the big picture first. So nutrition insecurity, it essentially means that someone who cannot afford 3 healthy meals a day, and here at the San Diego Hunger Coalition, we define nutrition insecurity as households that are earning under 225% of the federal poverty level. So, for example, for a family of four in 2026, that would be under 74,250 a year. And that might sound like a higher salary than some people would expect, but with rising housing costs and childcare costs and food costs, many families who are working full time still unfortunately fall into this category. So let's dive a little deeper into the nutrition insecurity rate. Right now, more than 1 in 4 people in San Diego County are nutrition insecure. And something that I want to point out is that if we look at the graph here, we can see that after December 2024, the nutrition insecurity rate increases to 26%, and then it drops down again to 25% in December of 2025. So this marks the first time in a year that the nutrition insecurity has decreased. However, that full sustained year of high levels of nutrition insecurity has resulted in a meal gap of 6 million meals just in December alone. And that meal gap is one of the big focuses that the San Diego Hunger Coalition essentially aims to address. And then this here is a little table to break those numbers down even further by some populations. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, San Diego County has a nutrition insecurity rate of 25% in San Diego, as of December 2025. So this means that 32% of children, 25% of older adults, and 37% of people with disabilities all throughout San Diego County are nutrition insecure. Now, this is important because it does show that nutrition insecurity is more prominent among specific populations than it is with others. And we do have a bit more information on that on our website if you guys are interested. And then here we have a pie chart that breaks down the number of meals that were provided by the various food assistance programs across San Diego County. Again, this is all from data from December of 2025. So one of the first things that I want to note here is that the hunger relief sector in San Diego County provided 27.7 million meals across all of these programs. And as you guys can see, 57% of those meals are from CalFresh, which means that it is the most effective food assistance program in San Diego County. However, as I mentioned earlier, despite all of these meals that are being provided by all of these different programs, the county was still short by 6 million meals. So this is going to mean that thousands of families went hungry around this time. And when we talk about CalFresh changes, we're talking about impacts on tens of thousands of San Diego County residents. So ultimately, any shift in eligibility or work requirements, it doesn't just affect like a small group, it more so affects entire communities altogether. All right, and now we'll go ahead and start shifting towards talking about policy changes that will be coming from the federal budget reconciliation bill. So what is H.R.1? If you guys aren't familiar with it yet, in July of 2025, H.R.1, which is also known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, was signed into law by our current president. It includes some of the most severe SNAP cuts in the program's history, and the major areas of change include immigrant eligibility restrictions, expanded ABOD work requirements, limits to the Thrifty Food Plan, and the elimination of the SNAP Ed funding. And these are not just minor changes or minor adjustments, these are structural changes that we'll go ahead and dive into in the coming slides. So first off, we'll go ahead and dive into CalFresh for immigrants. And I appreciate that you guys are still responding in the chat. It's nice to get an idea of who's here today. But yes, for CalFresh for immigrants, this is going to be one of the big changes here. So starting April 1st of 2026, immigrant eligibility for CalFresh will be significantly restricted. So only U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents of at least 5 years, green card holders, certain Cuban and Haitian entrants, and COFA migrants through the COFA agreement, they will be able to remain eligible for CalFresh benefits. However, to really demonstrate how big of a change this is to eligibility, we'll actually go ahead and go to the next slide and show a list of individuals who are going to be losing access. Yeah. So as you guys can see here, this is a list of immigrants who are losing access to CalFresh, and it's quite large. In fact, many immigrants who are currently eligible will end up losing access to CalFresh benefits, and this is going to include refugees, asylees, UNT visa holders, certain parolees, and special immigrant visa holders. And again, these are individuals who were previously eligible for CalFresh, but will be losing eligibility for benefits once the rules start to be enforced next month. These groups will likely have to turn to alternative food relief programs. So food distributions is going to be a really big one. And we do recommend that organizations stay prepared and stay in touch with those major food banks like Feeding San Diego or San Diego Food Bank. Now, with implementation, the implementation of these changes might be a little tricky, so we really want to clear this up as much as possible. So these changes will officially begin in April 1st of 2026. So that's just right around the corner in a month. However, implementation will depend on if you are a current CalFresh recipient or if you are applying for the first time to CalFresh after April 1st. So for all new applications that are submitted after April 1st, they will be subject to the new immigrant eligibility rules and will unfortunately be denied if they are no longer of eligible status. However, if you're a current CalFresh recipient, you can actually continue receiving benefits until your next recertification, even if that's after April 1st. And recertifications are typically a full year after you initially apply for CalFresh or 6 months after you first renew your benefits with a SAR 7. This is meant to act kind of as a buffer so that everyone doesn't lose all of their benefits all at once. And I also want to note that families don't need to report a change in immigration status mid-period. Instead, they can wait for the county to reevaluate their case at their renewal. So that's going to be a super important message for outreach because certain immigrants may continue to receive benefits until their recertification, and we really don't want anyone to essentially withdraw of the program from receiving any benefits early or prematurely. Again, most households recertify every 12 months or 6 months after their SAR 7, but there are some exceptions to this. So, for example, some elderly or disabled households may have 24 or 36-month certification periods. And ultimately, to find the correct accurate date, we really encourage families to check Benefits Cal or call the access line to get that specific date that's specific to them. So what is this impact going to look like? Well, CDSS estimates that roughly 72,000 individuals will lose assistance due to these immigrant eligibility changes. And I do want to note that mixed status households will also be reevaluated during recertification, and any eligible members can continue receiving benefits. But right now, to really minimize the loss of benefits, outreach is going to be super critical. And we really want to emphasize that immigrant households that are currently enrolled on CalFresh can stay on those benefits until their individual recertification. Again, even if that's after April 1st. And we really want families to understand that so that they, again, don't disenroll prematurely. Of course, although we really want to encourage people to apply in order to minimize the loss of benefits, we acknowledge that some families might hesitate to apply due to public charge and the public charge ruling. So to clarify a little bit, currently CalFresh participation does not count against someone in public charge determination. This means that applying for CalFresh does not impact immigration status under the current rule and will not affect someone's ability to update their immigration status or become a naturalized citizen. However, the current administration has proposed some possible changes, although nothing has officially changed just yet. The final public charge rule established during the Biden administration remains in place for now. But again, we want to remain transparent and we want to share this information with families so that those families can make informed decisions about applying for benefits on their terms. Speaking of public charge, it's important to note that there is a major misconception regarding public charge. Essentially, public charge does not impact all immigrants, and it actually does not affect the majority of immigrants who are currently eligible for CalFresh. Instead, public charge primarily affects individuals who are applying for green cards through family petitions. So this means that refugees, asylees, VAWA applicants, and others are going to be exempt from public charge. And I'm sure all of you guys know just how important and essential it is to have accurate information so that families can stay up to date and make informed decisions, especially when it comes to policies that regard immigration or immigrants in general. So one great organization that we want to share is PIF. That stands for Protecting Immigrant Families. And they have super useful flyers and educational materials about these type of policy changes and just general policies. And we highly recommend you guys view some of their resources. And then another concern is in regard to data privacy. So many families have a concern with data privacy, specifically when they're applying for benefits. Recently, as many of you guys may have heard, the federal government has attempted to access personal information of CalFresh recipients. And in response to that, several states, including California, have taken legal action. So at this moment, a temporary court order prevents California from sharing this data with the federal government. However, we don't know what the next steps might be at the federal level. And again, we really want to encourage, or although we really want to encourage families and people to use their benefits while they are eligible for those benefits, we still want to make sure that we are being transparent with this information so that they can make those informed decisions themselves. And when families are deciding whether to apply for benefits, there are other important privacy protections to understand. So, for example, applicants do not need to provide information about household members who are not applying for benefits. So, for example, a big one could be undocumented parents. They can still apply on behalf of their children without disclosing that or disclose without disclosing their own immigration status if they choose to opt out. So that's super important to know. In addition to that, it's also important to note that disenrolling from benefits does not erase information that's already in the system, unfortunately. And I also want to note that many immigrants who are eligible for CalFresh are historically not at high risk of facing immigration enforcement, such as naturalized citizens, legal permanent residents, people granted asylum and or refugee status, and so on. Again, PIF has a lot of great resources and they have another fantastic database of flyers that is available specifically detailing data privacy. So again, we highly recommend you guys check those out as well. And it does look like we have a question in chat here. To confirm, an undocumented parent does not have to disclose immigration status, but they do need to report their name, date of birth, and income to apply on behalf of their children, correct? And are you
Yes.
able to elaborate on that a little?
Yes, so that would be correct. They wouldn't need to disclose their immigration status at any point, even if they are applying on behalf of their child. They would, of course, only be required to provide their proof of income. And this is because income does affect how much benefits you can be eligible for, and a portion of that parent's income does go towards raising and, of course, feeding the child. So it does have to get taken into account. But correct, they do not need to share their immigration status at any point in time, even when they initially apply or when they renew their benefits. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat or let us know at any point. Alrighty, and then another resource I want to share with you guys. I know that this is, oh, it looks like we have another question. So if someone is, let me scroll down. If someone is sponsoring wife for U.S. residency, there's no public charge. Anna, do you know if you can clarify that?
Yeah, so when it comes to public charge, it will vary on a case by case basis. If someone is of current immigration, or sorry, if eligible immigration status, and their immigration status makes them eligible for CalFresh benefits, right now, them using CalFresh make them, would not count against them on a public charge test. But I will say for the case that you just shared, if someone's sponsoring their wife for US residency and they're currently on CalFresh, right now it also wouldn't affect them. We don't know entirely what the current administration plans for some of the public charge changes they have proposed. So although right now CalFresh is not included on a public charge test, we do just want to be transparent and share that we don't know what the administration has planned for proposed changes.
Thank you so much.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for answering that, Anna. We can go ahead and move on to here. So I know already up until this point, we're giving a lot of information. So I want to share another resource that you guys can view at any moment. This is relating to CalFresh for non-citizens. So the California Department of Social Services, which is the CDSS, they've developed informational flyers and a few FAQ flyers about immigrant eligibility changes. And these resources are designed for community organizations to share with families. And they include clear explanations of the eligibility rules, and they provide some frequently asked questions. And what's neat is that they're available in a bunch of different formats for accessibility. So they have a couple of different language versions of it. So they have English, Arabic, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, and they have a few more as well. And then they also have other options. So they have some that are colored and some that are in grayscale. I do see someone asking if we can link it in the chat. I think we'll also go ahead and send these slides after. But Anna, do you think you're able to send that up by any chance?
Yes, I can. Just give me a moment.
Okay, no worries. Thank you, Anna. And yeah, I think if you're whenever you're ready to move to the next slide too. Perfect, perfect. So yeah, and one final thing that I want.
Andrew, you just muted yourself. So sorry about that.
Oh, thanks for letting me know. I'm sorry. Yeah, one thing I want to let you guys know as well is that while some immigrants are going to be ineligible for CalFresh, they may be eligible for CFAP, which are essentially state-funded food stamps. CFAP stands for the California Food Assistance Program, and essentially starting April 1st, the following groups are going to be eligible for CFAP, and that's going to include legal permanent residents of less than 5 years, parolees, conditional entrants, battered citizens, so VAWA self-petitioners. But I do want to disclose as well that most immigrants who are losing CalFresh eligibility will also not be eligible for CFAP, with the exception of the small group of battered non-citizens and certain parolees. Alrighty, and I'll go ahead and pass it over to Anna, and she's going to dive into some of the ABOD work requirement changes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrew. I did share the link that you can grab all of the flyers from CDSS, from the California Department of Social Services, in the chat. They have all of the different available languages close to the bottom of this page. But again, we will also be sharing out the slides and all of the material after this presentation is over. So don't worry about, copying down or trying to share out any links yet. All right. So I will go ahead and transition into talking a little bit about the ABOD work requirements and the rule changes. ABOD, for your reference, stands for able-bodied adults without dependents, and it is a federal rule that is in place that limits the amount of time that someone can stay on CalFresh to 3 months in a 3-year period if they do not work or if they don't meet any work exemptions. And it will typically affect anyone who is age 64 or younger. So again, if you don't work, you're going to be limited to the amount of time you can stay on CalFresh benefits. And it's a pretty short period of time. 3 months is not very long at all. Implementation of this is going to begin starting June 1st of this year. So we have a few months before it actually starts to be enforced. But similar to the immigrant eligibility rule changes, this implementation will look a little different depending on if you are a current CalFresh recipient or if you are newly applying for CalFresh after June 1st. For any new applicant, starting June, all applicants are going to be subject to work requirements, all applicants in the household. You will be required to show that you either work, volunteer, or meet an exemption in order for your CalFresh application to be approved. And for any current CalFresh recipient, so a household that has an active CalFresh case, they will have a bit of a buffer period, and they will only be subject to work rules after their next recertification, even if it is after June 1st. And in addition, the first countable month of that 3-month time limit can only start after their renewal of benefits after their recertification. So who is affected? Who must comply with the ABOD rules? These rules are going to apply to the vast majority of CalFresh recipients. They will apply to you if you are between the ages of 18 through 64. I do want to note previously ABOD rules only affected individuals 18 through 54. So as you can see, H.R.1 has expanded the impacted age range by about 10 years. Additionally, these rules will apply to you if you do not have a dependent child under the age of 14, and if you are considered physically and mentally able to work at least 20 hours per week. I do want to note that some individuals are going to be exempt. And in this case, on this slide here, we have some individuals who will actually be exempt from the time limit itself. Meaning that even if you don't meet work requirements, the amount of time that you can be on CalFresh benefits is not limited due to these exemptions. The first exemption is medical unfitness, meaning you are physically or mentally unable to work at least 20 hours per week. This can include people who are struggling with a drug or alcohol problem, domestic violence survivors, or those who are experiencing chronic homelessness. But I do want to note that this is not an automatic exemption. Counties have to evaluate each case on a case-by-case basis, and you must provide proof that there is a condition that is causing the inability to work. And we will actually go over an example of how someone can provide proof for this exemption on the next slide. But before that, there are a couple other exemptions. The first one being if you are, of course, responsible for a dependent under the age of 14, if you are pregnant at any stage, even if it is early pregnancy, or if you are considered an Indian, urban Indian, or Californian Indian. I do want to note for this last one here, you are going to have to provide documentation of this exemption as well. For example, providing a copy of your tribal card. But self-attestation will also suffice as proof. So you could provide a sworn statement that you are a part of this category. So I mentioned earlier that being considered physically or mentally unable to work would exempt you from the ABOD time limit rules, but it does require documentation of a medical condition that is causing that inability to work. In order to provide proof, individuals can get the CF 887 form completed by their medical provider. This form stands for the CalFresh Medical Certification Form, and it does act as sufficient documentation for this exemption. Although I do want to note all cases will still have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis by the county. I do see a question in the chat. Does this apply for 100% disabled veterans? So it does depend. There are other exemptions that can potentially apply to them, but you do have to, again, provide proof that you have a disability that is preventing you from working, or you can see if you can meet any of these other exemptions that we have listed here. So as you can see on the slide, there is a pretty long list of other exemptions that can make it so you aren't required to meet work requirements. And so to just go over each of them, if you are under the age of 18 or if you are over the age of 64, then you aren't going to be required to meet work requirements. If you are participating in an Office of Refugee Resettlement or training program for at least half time, or if you are acting as a caretaker for any child under the age of 6, or for any incapacitated person of any age. For example, if you are the caretaker for an older adult family member. If you're complying with CalWorks work requirements, or if you are applying for and getting UIB or the unemployment insurance benefits. In addition, you will also be exempt from work requirements if you are applying for or receiving Social Security benefits or any other type of disability benefits. So this does include veterans benefits, state disability, pension, workers' comp, and so on. You can also be exempt if you are participating in a drug or alcohol rehab program, if you are earning at least $217.50 per week, or approximately $817 per month, even if you aren't meeting those 20-hour work limits, or if you are enrolled at least half time in school or training. But I do want to note for this last exemption, you are going to have to meet a student exemption in order to be approved for benefits. And I do see a couple more questions in the chat. Would they need to fill out the exemption form every time they apply for or recertify for CalFresh? And the answer to this is yes. Most likely they will have to prove again that they have a valid exemption every single time they apply and recertify their benefits. And this is just because medical conditions can change, and the county would need proof that you are still considered medically unable, either physically or mentally unable to meet those work requirements. So that is a great question, and the answer is yes. And can a MH therapist fill out this form, or substance counselors or centers? Yes, they could potentially fill out the form. But again, I do want to note the county is going to have their eligibility workers actually process the case, and they will have to, again, confirm that the condition is causing the inability to work. So it will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Having the form can strengthen the argument that you qualify for the exemption, but I do just want to note it isn't a guarantee. And I do see another question: to confirm if someone is an ABOD and a student, they have to meet an exemption from both. So if someone is a college student, for example, and they're taking classes full-time or half-time, then being a college student would actually exempt you from meeting ABOD work requirements. So you aren't going to be required to show that you are working. However, you will have to show that you at least meet other student exemptions. We aren't going to focus too heavily on student exemptions here, but just for example, if you are receiving the Cal Grant, right, or if you are receiving federal work study, that can provide you with a student exemption. But again, if you are a college student, you are considered exempt from the ABOD work requirements. You would just have to show you meet a student exemption instead. Thank you so much for all of these questions, everyone. You all are asking such great ones. All right. And I will note here, there are a lot of exemptions, as you can see here. Again, we will send out these slides after this training is over, so don't worry about trying to copy or screenshot anything. And I do see one more question. How will H.R.1 impact direct certification for K through 12 students or categorical eligibility for Sunbucks or summer EBT? So that is a super great question, Emma. And right now, H.R.1 is not going to directly affect anyone who is eligible for Sunbucks at this time. So if you are eligible for sorry, let me start from the beginning here, just so everyone has context. Right now, if you are on CalFresh or if you are eligible for CalFresh, if you have children in your family who are school aged, receiving CalFresh will make you automatically eligible for summer EBT or Sunbucks. Right now, H.R.1 is not directly impacting Sunbucks, but it will indirectly impact eligibility for the program, just because some people are going to lose eligibility, of course, for CalFresh. And it will, of course, remove that direct categorical eligibility for the summer EBT program. And so I do just want to note, when it comes to summer EBT, a child will be considered automatically eligible for the program as long as their family was on CalFresh at any point during the school year. So because these H.R.1 changes are not going to be taking place until next month, and then in a few months in June, We are hopeful that it won't impact summer EBT participation as much this year. We will likely see some drops in the following year, just based on the indirect impacts to CalFresh eligibility. But right now, H.R.1 isn't directly impacting summer EBT. All right. Do we have any more questions before we continue? Okay, doesn't look like it. Perfect. So some other things to know is that the criteria for who must follow ABOD rules is also changing due to HR1. And HR1 is going to be eliminating some long-standing work exemptions that we have had in the past. And this does mean that people experiencing homelessness, individuals who are under the age of 24 who aged out of foster care, and veterans will now be required to show that they meet work requirements or risk being subject to the time limit rules. This population and these groups are important to point out because these groups previously had long-standing exemptions to the ABOD rules and were not required to show that they meet work requirements. Starting in June, these groups are going to have to show that they work, volunteer, or again meet an exemption in order to continue receiving their benefits without being subject to those time limits. I do want to go into a little bit more detail for some of the exemptions we mentioned earlier. So I mentioned earlier, you can be exempt from the ABOD rules if you are responsible for a dependent child under the age of 14. There are a couple important details to note for this exemption. This exemption has changed due to HR1. Previously, anyone who was responsible for a child under the age of 18 would be exempt. But the age range has decreased to 14, which is really important to know. And some additional things I would like to note is that a single dependent child can exempt more than one adult in the household. So for example, if you have a single child, but you have two parents, that single child could exempt both parents, or the child could exempt a older sibling and a parent. Responsibility for a dependent child can include both formal and informal caregiving arrangements with any adult. It isn't limited to parents as well. It can also exempt step-parents, siblings, grandparents, relatives, or even an unrelated individual, again, as long as they are able to show proof that they are responsible for the dependent child and their care. And some examples of a person who would be exempt due to responsibility for a child could include an adult sibling who's age 18 or older, who regularly provides after-school care and supervision for a younger sibling under the age of 14. Another example can include a non-parent household member who routinely provides childcare. So for example, if you have an aunt in the household who is providing care for her niece or nephew. And I do want to note as well, the child does not have to be living with you, so they do not have to reside in the household to provide you with an exemption. You do just, again, have to show proof that you are responsible for the care of this dependent child. All right. So if you don't meet any of those work exemptions that we just talked about, then participants are going to be required that they either work, volunteer, or are in education or training at least 80 hours per month in order to show that they meet the ABOD work requirements. It can include a pretty wide variety of things, as you can see here on the slide. It can include paid employment, including if you are an employee or if you are self-employed. Unpaid work can also count. For example, if you are doing an internship. In-kind work. So for example, if you are working for your landlord to reduce your rental payments. Volunteering and community service can also count. CalFresh ENT, that stands for employment and training, or a combination of any of the activities that I just listed. So if you're working, part-time, but you're also volunteering part-time, you can use a combination of hours to meet that 80-hour requirement for the month. Of course, if you are working or volunteering, you will still have to provide proof to the county that you are doing so. And so there are a couple of documents that you can potentially provide in order to show proof. The obvious ones include things like pay stubs, so a copy of how much you're earning every month. You can include employers' letters or statements. For example, you could provide your offer letter if you haven't gotten paid yet. Maybe you're starting a new job. You could also provide self-employment ledgers or bookkeeping records. If you are a volunteer, you can ask your organization to provide you with collateral contact, so just showing that you are actually acting as a volunteer for them. Or you can do self-attestation or a sworn statement, just a written statement stating how much you are working or volunteering, and you must have your name, signature, and the date signed in order for this document to be considered valid. Of course, we know it isn't easy to meet those work requirements. Unemployment feels like it's at an all-time high, and I'm not sure if any of you know anyone, a friend or family member who's trying to find work, but it is definitely very difficult right now. Fortunately, there are many programs here in San Diego that do help individuals meet these requirements. Organizations like 211 San Diego. I know we have a few folks actually from this org who are here joining us today. But there are other organizations as well, including Kitchens for Good and the San Diego Workforce Partnership. All of these organizations provide training, employment support, and job placement services. And we have provided individual links for all of these organizations on the slide here. And again, we will be sending it out. But all of these programs can potentially help individuals gain skills, find employment, and hopefully help them remain eligible for CalFresh benefits. So we mentioned earlier that for current CalFresh households, they will only be subject to these work rules after their next recertification. So whatever certification they would have after June 1st. It is really important to remind everyone that the first countable month of the 3-month time limit due to ABOD will only start after that recertification happens. So even if you don't meet the work requirements starting June, it's okay. As long as you have a active CalFresh case, you aren't going to be subject to these rules until the county reevaluates your case at your recertification date. And it is also important to know, of course, when it comes to the time limit, the 3-month time limit, it is part of a fixed statewide clock. So I mentioned earlier, if you don't meet the work requirements, you're going to be limited to receiving CalFresh for 3 months in a 3-year time period. This 3-year time period is part of that fixed statewide clock I mentioned earlier. So everyone has the same 3-year time period. And this statewide clock started in January of 2026 and will reset in January of 2029. And this 3-month time limit is going to rest within this fixed time frame. And I do see another question in the chat. Can a person submit self-declared income if their employer does not provide pay stubs? So absolutely, Gabriella, a person can self-declare their income. They can provide a sworn statement. They would just have to make sure that they state how many, of course, hours they are working, how much they are earning, and they would have to make sure that they sign and date the statement for it to be considered valid. Thank you so much. All right. So continuing on here, it is also important to know that certain months will not count against the 3-month time limit. So just for example, if you applied in July, maybe mid-July, but your application doesn't get approved until July 21st, so your applicant only receives partial benefits for the month. Because the applicant is not receiving the full amount of benefits for that month, that would not count towards the 3-month time limit. Additionally, if they are living in an area covered by the time limit waiver, unfortunately, San Diego County doesn't apply for this case. Or if they are found to have a good cause for not meeting the time limit rules. But I do want to note this particular one here is up to county discretion. So it is up to the county to determine if someone does actually have good cause for not meeting the time limit rules. So it is, again, going to be on a case by case basis. CDSS, or the California Department of Social Services, is preparing outreach material related to this ABOD policy change. It is going to be very similar to the immigrant changes flyer that we mentioned earlier. It's going to include informational flyers, social media templates, and hopefully an FAQ page as well for organizations to share. These materials are expected to be available starting May, and we will be sure to share it with all of you once it is available. But for now, you can read the latest information shared from CDSS in their latest all-county letter, which is 2593, which we have linked on here. Or you can also visit their website with CalFresh ABOD FAQs, or frequently asked questions. All right. So we will now shift into talking a little bit about some other HR1 changes coming. But before I do start that, I do just want to make sure if anyone has any questions about any of the changes that we've already talked about, immigrant eligibility or ABOD. Okay, it doesn't look like it. If you think of any questions, please feel free to ask them. Again, please don't be shy. Okay. So when it comes to HR1, it is also causing a funding shift for how the administrative cost is funded for CalFresh. CalFresh administrative funding is currently split between the federal government and the state government equally, 50-50 split. Starting in October of 2026, this change is going to shift to a 25-75% split, with the state responsible for that 75% share. It is important to note that the state is not responsible for 100% of that portion. The counties will also be subject to paying a higher load for that CalFresh administrative funding. In California, it'll be split between the state and county by 52.5% for the state and 22.5% for the counties. This administrative funding is really important for us to, take note of, because it does help. It does help us pay for state and county staff. It helps us pay for the call centers, keeping them up, keeping our hours regular, EBT cards, and of course, maintenance for CalSAWS or Benefits Cal, so the application platform. This change will also impact CalFresh outreach funding. And CAFB, or the California Association of Food Banks, has estimated that the annual federal reimbursement available for CalFresh outreach activities will be reduced by about $14 million once this change does take place. And I do see a question in the chat. How does this affect married couples with children if one parent is working and the other is a stay-at-home parent? Will the stay-at-home parent need to work, volunteer, etc.? Will there be a reduction in benefits? So that's a really great question, and I assume you're talking about the ABOD work changes. So if they are caring for a child that is older than 14, or if they're 14 or older, then both parents will be required to meet work requirements, even if one parent is working and the other is a stay-at-home parent. So this would apply if they don't have a child that's younger than 14. So yeah, unfortunately, even if one parent's working, both parents are going to be required to meet those work requirements if the other parent, that stay-at-home parent, doesn't meet any other exemption. All right. Continuing on here, in addition to the administrative cost sharing change, the state is potentially going to have to be expected to pay for CalFresh benefits as well. States with a high error rate for cases above 6% are going to be expected to partially fund CalFresh benefits. Right now, the federal government funds 100% of CalFresh benefits. And beginning in 2025, California may be expected to pay up to $2.1 billion annually for benefits if we continue to have a high error rate. Right now, California is well above that. And so, starting in 2028, when this change does take place, it is going to put a very heavy burden on the state budget, and it may lead to the reallocation of the budget from other important resources. And so it is very important for every county in California to keep error rates down as much as we can. If you are working with CalFresh participants or any new CalFresh applicants, we highly encourage you to encourage them to report changes to the county as soon as possible, whether it be income changes or household changes, as that will help us keep our error rate as low as possible. And you can quickly report changes by going to benefitscal.com. You don't even need an account. You can simply upload a document as long as you have your case number on hand. You can also directly call the county access line to report a change if it has happened. There are, of course, other states or other changes we need to make note of as well. H.R.1 is, of course, restricting the Thrifty Food Plan. Thrifty Food Plan, or TFP, is used by the federal government, and it outlines the cost of a nutritious, minimal cost diet that can be prepared at home. And this means that TFP, or the Thrifty Food Plan, serves as the basis for determining how much benefits households can receive every month. Due to H.R.1, all future reevaluations of the Thrifty Food Plan are going to be required to be cost neutral. And this does mean that it's going to prevent any increases to CalFresh benefits beyond food price inflation. So it will be difficult for benefits to rise as much in the future due to H.R.1. It is also important to know that the Thrifty Food Plan is not only tied to CalFresh, but it is also tied to a couple other food programs we have in place, such as TAFAP, or the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and Sunbucks as well, or Summer EBT. For the Emergency Food Assistance Program, this program is very important to the food banks. It distributes locally grown food to the food banks and emergency feeding organizations, and it is going to limit their funding. And in addition, Sunbucks is going to be impacted because Sunbucks benefit levels are adjusted due to the Thrifty Food Plan. So we will likely not see any increases to the Sunbucks benefit levels. And ultimately, this change with H.R.1 is estimated to cause an annual loss of $11.6 million in federal funding for all of these programs. This change here isn't new. It actually began last year in October. But the CalFresh Healthy Living Program, or SNAP-Ed, did lose federal funding due to H.R.1. Previously, prior to this provision, California would receive about $132 million annually for nutrition education activities and obesity prevention. And so with all of these funding cuts and reductions and changes to, CalFresh due to H.R.1, we highly encourage you to advocate for CalFresh outreach funding. Several organizations, including CAFB, 211 San Diego, and Aliados Health, are advocating for a state budget request to fund CalFresh outreach efforts. If approved, this funding would help replace federal dollars that CalFresh outreach programs are expected to lose beginning in October due to H.R.1. There are a couple of ways you could actually take action. The first way would be through an organizational sign-on letter in support of this state budget request. There is no formal deadline at this time, but we do, of course, encourage early sign-ons. You can also individually take action by doing a quick email. You can click on the link that we have on here and you can send a quick email in support of this request to your representative. Of course, we recognize that there are a lot of changes we just went over, and with all of the immigrant changes and ABOD rules to know, we also understand that it isn't easy to wrap your head around it, and so we have developed a HR1 toolkit. It has a condensed version of all of these HR1 changes. It goes over detail of the changes coming, including public charge and data privacy, and it does also feature a frequently asked question section as well. And this will be available on our website in this coming week, but you can also find the link to actually visit this toolkit here on the slide. And with that, I will go ahead and pass it over back to Andrew to talk a little bit about alternative food resources that people can use since CalFresh is currently under attack due to H.R.1. So I will pass it to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, as you mentioned, since there are a lot of changes coming to CalFresh, it's going to be extra important to know some of these alternative food resources really well. So in the next couple of slides, we'll break down all of these and we'll go over WIC, which stands for Women, Infants, and Children. We'll go over Sunbucks, Meals for Older Adults, and food distributions as well. So WIC, as I mentioned, stands for Women, Infants, and Children. It essentially provides benefits and nutritional support to women and children under the age of 5. It specifically provides them with cash benefits for healthy foods, nutrition information, and breastfeeding support. They have offices all throughout San Diego, and you can actually find some of their locations by going to sdwic.com. And I do want to note this is another program that is not going to be affected in regards to eligibility, or sorry, immigration status will not be affected in terms of eligibility for this program, for WIC. And then next up here we have Sunbucks. So Sunbucks is also known as Summer EBT, and it is a federal program that aims to provide food resources to students during summer. So it specifically provides $120 worth of benefits per child that can be used towards groceries or food during the summer. And one thing that's really neat is that families that are on CalFresh, this is something that Anna mentioned earlier, they are going to be automatically enrolled for Sunbucks, and immigration status does not affect eligibility for this program either. And then next up, we have Meals for Older Adults. So essentially, the County of San Diego contracts with different community organizations to provide free meals for eligible older adults at various locations all throughout the county. And if you want a full list of these meal providers, you can actually find that on the Health and Human Services Agency's nutrition service page. You can see a picture of what that looks like here, and essentially it names all these different organizations, the time of any lunch hours or any addresses, and just provides a bunch of information on those meals. Once again, immigration status does not affect the eligibility for this program either. And then next up, we have medically tailored meals. So Medi-Cal recipients with qualifying conditions can receive free home delivered meals through providers such as Mama's Kitchen. They are a great organization that works with medically tailored meals, but we know that there are also a few others that we want to highlight with this program. And then last but not least, families can also get food through food distributions. So the two main food banks in the county are Feeding San Diego and the San Diego Food Bank. And both of these coordinate a lot of food distributions all throughout the county and will remain a critical safety net as a lot of these CalFresh changes come around. What's really neat about them is that they each offer a distribution map locator on their website, which are incredibly helpful. Essentially, these are maps that you can navigate and you can filter via zip code or day of operation or the type of distribution. And once you enter all that in, it'll show you the nearest distributions in that area. And then as an additional resource here at the San Diego Hunger Coalition, we have created a food assistance resource flyer. and we do our best to update it pretty regularly. It provides a lot of information regarding each of these different programs, and it's available in 13 different languages as well. So it's super helpful when connecting families to different food assistance resources. And then just to wrap up here, I just wanted to include some additional information regarding some of our other upcoming trainings for April. So we have our CalFresh one-on-one training, and that's going to be updated with the new HR1 policy changes as well. This is essentially a training dedicated entirely to understanding the ins and outs of the CalFresh process. And then we also have our Hunger Free Navigator training, which is essentially a training that goes into greater detail about all of these local food assistance resources available in San Diego County. Alrighty, and that's all we have for you guys today. I want to thank you guys for being here. I know this is a lot of information, and I know there's a lot going on too. So I want to thank you for being here, and also for the work that you guys do to support families in our communities all the time, especially as these changes come around. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to Anna or I, and we'd be more than happy to help out in any way possible. Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. Can we write a question in the chat box now for you?
Yeah,
Oh,
Would you
yes,
prefer that?
perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? I might as well tell you
Yes,
since
yes.
I'm already talking to you. You know, I work for the Community Resource Center and the Homeless Division for people that are living in their vehicles and housing them. And some of the people are dealing with drugs and all of that, a lot of psychosocial issues. Some of them are felons, and one in particular has a warrant out. He's a parolee. And my understanding is that they do not qualify for food benefits. And I'm wondering if the California food assistance program that you mentioned, you said it was for parolees, but would they take someone, would they consider an application of someone that's has a warrant?
So that is a great question. I do understand if you do have if you are a felon, it would disqualify you for things like CalFresh benefits, as you stated. For CFAP or the California Food Assistance Program, you are correct in that certain parolees will qualify for the program, but I would have to look individually to see if having a warrant or being a felon would disqualify you for the program like CalFresh. So I don't have that
Okay.
information on hand right now, but we can definitely look into it. If you'd
Okay.
like to share your email or if you want to send us a direct email, you can email
Sure.
Andrew and I or the both of us, and we can make sure we can get that information back.
Okay. You want me to email you or put it in the chat? What do you prefer?
Either one works. Or if you could send us a direct email, I think that'd be better.
A direct email? Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you
Actually,
so
I'll give it to
much.
my coworker who has that specific client.
Okay,
But
perfect.
okay, because that might come up again
Mhm.
with the different clients that we have. Thank you so much for your time. It was very helpful, all this information.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. And I do see another question in the chat really quick. For work requirements, what does implementation look like? If someone is approved and identified as an ABOD, does their case simply close at the 3-month mark, or is there another reevaluation process? So if someone gets approved for benefits, but they don't meet any of the work requirements, but they, are considered to, they are required to meet the ABOD rules, then at that 3-month mark, once they reach that time limit, their case would close. The county would be required to notify them. We are still, of course, pending the exact implementation details when it comes to the county's end on how households will be notified and how early they will actually be notified once the time limit does start. So it is important to keep in mind that we don't have exact details yet, just because the ABOD rules won't come into play until around June. But once they reach that time limit, their benefits would end until the 3-year time limit resets in January of 2029. Thank you so much. And yes, Andrew said it, but yes, we will send out the slides. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. With that, I will go ahead and stop